Close your eyes. Imagine the scorching sands of ancient Egypt beneath your feet, the weight of massive limestone blocks crushing your shoulders, the taste of blood and dust in your throat, the crack of whips, the final gasps of dying men filling the air. But what if I told you the pyramids of Egypt, their grandeur, their majesty, are built on a foundation of human bones, that these supposed wonders of the world were constructed through blood, sweat, and tears? Beneath their monumental surfaces lies something far darker than the world has ever imagined. Welcome to Ancient Mysteries for Sleep. I'm your guide through the shadows of history, and tonight we unravel the truth behind the pyramids, the human cost that's been buried for millennia. This isn't a tale of divine inspiration or noble devotion. No, this is the story of the forgotten, the hundreds of thousands who were torn from their homes, branded like cattle, and forced to build the tombs of kings, never to see their families again. We'll walk in the footsteps of those who never chose this fate, whose bodies crumbled like the very stones they carved. Tonight, we step into a living hell. We begin where dreams turned to nightmares, and human life became the cheapest currency in Egypt. Are you ready to see the side of history no one talks about? Let's begin. They rise from the desert like mountains built by gods. The pyramids of Egypt, Giza, Saqqara, Dashur, monuments so magnificent they've inspired awe for over 4,000 years. But have you ever wondered who paid the true price for this grandeur? Stand before the Great Pyramid today, and you'll hear tour guides speak of architectural genius, spiritual significance, and human ingenuity, the triumph of a civilization that defied its limits to achieve the impossible. But buried beneath those massive limestone blocks is another story, a story ancient Egypt never wanted you to hear. The beautiful lie begins with the pharaohs themselves, divine kings chosen by the gods, destined to rule not just Egypt, but the afterlife. Their tombs weren't mere burial places. They were stairways to the stars, monuments that would secure Egypt's eternal glory. This myth justified everything. Every death, every drop of blood, every broken body. How could you question the will of a god? How could you refuse to serve divine purpose? How could you value one life above the eternal glory of Egypt itself? The scale of pyramid construction defies imagination. The Great Pyramid alone contains over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 15 tons. If you stacked them end to end, they'd stretch from New York to Los Angeles. If you built a wall, you could encircle the entire continent of Australia. But here's what the guides won't tell you. Every single block was cut, shaped, and moved by human hands. Hands that bled, backs that broke, bodies that collapsed under the crushing weight of divine ambition. The ancient records speak of willing workers, devoted subjects, eager to serve their god-king, craftsmen proud of their sacred duty, farmers grateful for steady work during the Nile's flood season. But these records were written by scribes in palaces, men who never lifted anything heavier than a reed pen. The truth is written in the mass graves, the worker villages built like prisons, the meager rations designed to keep men alive but never healthy. Close your eyes, drift back with me, back to a time when the pyramids were not tourist destinations but active construction sites. When the desert air rang with more than just the hum of tourists' cameras, it rang with the screams of dying men. It begins not in a palace, but in a village by the Nile. Mud brick homes, warm with the smell of barley and onions, children who chase geese through narrow streets, unaware that their laughter is about to vanish forever. You had a name, a family, a life. You were a farmer, a potter, a weaver. You paid your taxes, honored the gods, and dreamed of good harvests. Then came the morning that changed everything. The recruiters arrived like a plague, with the Pharaoh's symbols and royal seals. Their words spoke of honor, of divine purpose, but their promises tasted of ash, and their chains felt colder than death. The god King Khufu has decreed a great work, they said. Those who serve will be blessed. Those who refuse will face divine wrath. Divine wrath, the cleanest words for the ugliest reality. You have no choice. Come willingly, and your family may eat while you're gone. Refuse, and they starve while you rot in prison. Your debt to the crown, real or invented, becomes your chain. Some men step forward eagerly. Others are dragged, kicking and screaming. Most stand in silence, knowing their old life has ended, and their new one will be measured in pain. The preparation is swift. One day to settle your affairs, one day to say goodbye, one day before you become property of the pyramid. Your wife doesn't cry, not in front of the children, but that night she holds you with a desperation born of fear. You promise to return. She promises to wait, but you both know. These are the lies that love demands. Your eldest son tries to be brave. "I'll take care of mother," he says, his voice cracking. You nod, stealing his childhood, forcing him to become something you should have remained. The journey to the pyramid site feels endless. With each step, the green world falls away. The Nile becomes a memory. Palm trees fade into nothing but sand and the weight of the sky. You march in columns, supervised by guards who speak little and carry heavy sticks. Anyone who falls behind is beaten. Anyone who turns back vanishes. By the third day, you understand. This isn't work. This is collection. You're not laborers. You're resources, like grain or cattle, like stones for the pyramid. The psychological weight of the journey crushes you long before the physical labor begins. With each mile, you shed another piece of who you were: husband, father, dreamer. By the time you see the pyramid rising from the desert like a stone monster, you've become something else entirely: a unit of labor, a means to an end. The pyramid doesn't awe you, it terrifies you. It grows larger, consuming more lives with every step. The worker camps spread like a disease. Thousands of men, living in conditions that would shame a kennel. Stone huts packed with bodies, the stench of unwashed flesh and infected wounds filling the air. This is where you'll live for the next 27 years. If you survive that long, if the heat doesn't bake you alive, if the work doesn't break your back, if disease doesn't eat you from within. Welcome to your new life. Welcome to the construction site of eternity. And as you pick up your first tool, a copper chisel dulled by countless hands before yours, you begin to understand the beautiful lie for what it really is. The pyramids weren't built by willing workers serving divine purpose. They were built by broken men, feeding a machine that devoured their lives. Monuments to the systematic destruction of everything that makes life worth living. The Pharaoh will claim immortality, but you're the one who dies to give it to him. 4,000 years later, we hear your story, not written in hieroglyphs, but in scars, carved in bones, preserved not in golden burial chambers, but in the mass graves that surround the pyramids like halos of death. The beautiful lie ends here. The terrible truth begins. In the palace at Memphis, where the god King Khufu holds court, the air is thick with incense and divine power. Gold leaf catches the light from hundreds of oil lamps. Servants move like shadows, eyes downcast, speaking only when spoken to, existing only to serve the divine will. But this is not a story of luxury. This is a story of the machine that mass-produces human suffering on an industrial scale. Khufu sits upon his throne not as a man, but as a living god. That's what he must believe, because if he is divine, then his commands are sacred law. His desires become cosmic necessity. His tomb becomes more important than the lives of the thousands who will die to build it. "I will build a tomb," he declares, "that will stand until the stars fall from the sky. A pyramid so magnificent that even the gods will weep at its beauty." The priests prostrate themselves. The architects bow deeply. The scribes scribble frantically. But none of them will lift the stones. None of them will bleed in the sand. None of them will die for this divine vision. That honor is reserved for you. The pyramid construction system is a perfect machine for transforming human life into stone monuments. At the very top, the God King himself, untouchable, infallible. Below him, the high priests speak of divine will. The royal architects design monuments to immortality. Below them, the construction supervisors enforce quotas with whips and clubs. And at the very bottom, you, the expendable foundation upon which everything else rests. The divine justification is elegant in its simplicity. The Pharaoh's successful journey to the afterlife ensures Egypt's prosperity for eternity. His pyramid isn't vanity, it's national security. The gods demand it. The cosmic order requires it. To refuse is to invite chaos, famine, and divine wrath upon Egypt. Every priest preaches this message. Every scribe records it. Every official enforces it. The mythology becomes so pervasive that even the workers begin to believe it. Their suffering has meaning. Their deaths serve Egypt's eternal glory. It's the most beautiful lie ever told, and the most deadly. Orders go out like ripples across Egypt. Every district must contribute. Every village must sacrifice. Every family must give up their strongest, their youngest, their most capable, to feed the pyramid's endless hunger. But how do you convince free men to choose slavery? How do you persuade fathers to leave their children for a project that will outlast generations? You don't convince, you take. The recruitment system is a masterpiece of organized coercion. Debt collectors discover that every peasant owes money to the royal treasury. Tax assessors find violations in every farmer's books. Judges rule that community service can replace criminal punishment. Men who thought they were free discover they were always property of the state, to be used as the pharaoh sees fit. Some villages resist. Elders refuse quotas. Priests question the divine necessity. Local officials prioritize their people's welfare over royal demands. These pockets of resistance are crushed swiftly. Villages are relocated, temples stripped, officials executed for treason. The message spreads quickly. Compliance is survival. Resistance is death. Khufu never visits the construction site. He never sees the blood in the sand, never hears the cries of the dying, never smells the stench of mass graves. He rules from a distance, where suffering looks like statistics and death becomes acceptable loss. In his mind, he's saving Egypt, ensuring its prosperity, fulfilling his divine mandate to build a bridge between earth and heaven. In reality, he's consuming his kingdom, one life at a time. The royal architects present their plans with mathematical precision. So many workers, so many years, so many tons of stone to move. They calculate everything except the human cost, and when they do, they decide it's acceptable. 20,000 workers for the first phase. To account for normal attrition, they'll need 30,000. It's a business plan, written in blood, budgeted in human life. The priests craft the religious justification like architects design pyramids. Every death becomes a sacrifice, every drop of blood an offering, every broken family a proof of devotion. The pyramid isn't just built by human hands, it's consecrated by human sacrifice. The scribes track everything except what matters most. Blocks moved, materials consumed, time expended. They don't record the names of the dead, the families destroyed, the dreams lost. Some things are too painful to acknowledge. Khufu sleeps peacefully in his palace while families across Egypt say goodbye to fathers and sons. He dreams of eternity while others prepare to live in hell. His appetite for immortality has become Egypt's nightmare. But the machine is in motion. The god has spoken. The pyramid must rise. And you, whether you chose this fate or had it chosen for you, are about to become part of the greatest construction project in human history and the greatest crime against humanity ever committed in the name of divine purpose. The orders reach your village at dawn. By sunset, you're walking away from everything you've ever known. By moonrise, you're just another number in the Pharaoh's ledger. The God King has spoken. The pyramid waits, and your real education in divine authority is about to begin. Welcome to the service of gods. Welcome to the construction of eternity. Welcome to the systematic destruction of everything that makes you human. The Pharaoh's hunger is infinite, and you are about to discover exactly what that means. The departure happens at dawn, when the world is still soft with sleep and possibility. Before the reality of what's happening can sink in, before second thoughts can become resistance, before love can override survival. 47 men from your district, each carrying a small bundle of possessions that represent everything they own in the world. Most bring bread for the journey. Some bring amulets of protection. A few bring hope. You bring only questions with no answers. The guards treat you like livestock from the first step, counting you off in groups of 10, checking your hands for calluses, examining your teeth like your horses for sale. Already, you cease to be human in their eyes. You become something else, pyramid material. The journey to the construction site takes 8 days on foot, 8 days to transform free men into slaves, 8 days to strip away your identity piece by piece until nothing remains but the capacity for labor. With each mile, the green world falls further behind. The Nile becomes a memory, then a myth, then a dream you're not sure you ever lived. Palm trees give way to scrub, then to endless sand, stone, and the unforgiving Egyptian sky. The landscape seems designed to break your spirit. No shade, no water except what the guards allow. No landmarks except occasional piles of bones, marking where previous workers lost to the desert's hunger fell. You walk in columns, supervised by men who speak little and carry long staves. Anyone who falls behind receives immediate attention, the kind that leaves marks and teaches lessons. Anyone who dares to suggest turning back faces a different kind of education, one involving a shallow grave and a warning to the others. On the second day, you try to keep morale up, sharing stories about families left behind and dreams of reunion. By the fourth day, those conversations die out. The reality is setting in. This isn't temporary employment. This is something else, something you can't name. The food is calculated with precision, just enough to keep you alive and walking. Hard bread that cuts your mouth, water that tastes like leather and desperation. Occasionally, a handful of dates, but those feel like treasures. Your body begins to understand what your mind refuses to accept. This is your new life. You will eat like this forever, as long as you survive. Some companions try to escape on the third night. You hear a brief struggle, then silence. The next morning, the guards count heads and make notes. No explanation is needed. The desert is your prison now. Escape is impossible. Your only hope is to survive and be useful enough to stay alive. By the fifth day, you notice changes in yourself and your fellow captives. Conversations become shorter, focused only on the immediate needs. The basic courtesies, please, thank you, vanish. Energy becomes too precious to waste on anything that doesn't directly ensure survival. You're becoming something new, something harder, something built to survive what's coming. The guards evaluate you constantly, sorting you into categories. Who has the strength to carry blocks? Who has the skill for stonework? Who can handle dangerous heights? They're deciding which kind of death you will meet. On the seventh day, you see it for the first time. The pyramid, a geometric mountain, rising from the desert like a fever dream. It towers above you, already taller than anything you've ever imagined. You should feel awe, wonder. Instead, you feel terror. You understand now. This is not a monument to human achievement. It is a predator, growing larger with every life it consumes. The pyramid looks like a stone beast that devours everything fed to it, growing with each sacrifice. And you are walking into its mouth. Around its base, the infrastructure of suffering spreads like an infection. Worker camps that smell of sweat, blood, and despair. Thousands of voices calling, shouting, screaming, dying. This is where you will live. If the pyramid doesn't kill you first, it will break you, and you will remain here until your body gives out, or your soul is too shattered to care. The guards grow more vigilant as you near the pyramid, not because escape is likely, but because arrival triggers psychological breakdowns. Some collapse, some run into the desert, some simply sit down, refusing to move. They've seen it before. Your group arrives in the evening, when the pyramid's shadow stretches across the desert. The worker camps are settling into their routines, sharing meager rations, tending wounds, mourning the dead. You are processed like grain, counted, catalogued, assigned to work gangs based on earlier assessments. Your name will be tracked until you are too dead to be useful. Veteran workers watch you with pity and relief. Pity for what's coming. Relief that it's not happening to them again. Some try to offer advice. Most say nothing. They know hope is a luxury. Your first night in the camps, you lie on a stone floor, surrounded by 30 men. The air is thick with the smell of bodies, wounds, and waste. Somewhere in the darkness, a man weeps. Another prays to gods who have abandoned this place. You realize the journey is over. You've reached your destination, and it is hell. Tomorrow, your real education begins. You'll learn what it means to move stones heavier than houses. You'll learn how much pain the human body can take before it stops. But tonight, you're still a man who remembers freedom. Tomorrow, that man will be gone, replaced by something harder, better suited for survival. Your transformation from human to construction material is almost complete. All that's left is to pick up your tools and begin the work that will consume your remaining life. The pyramid's appetite for sacrifice grows stronger with every passing day. Welcome to the construction site of eternity. Welcome to the place where dreams die. Welcome to the machine that turns men into monuments. Your real life is over. Tomorrow, you will be nothing but pyramid material. The limestone quarry stretches before you like a wound in the earth that bleeds men instead of blood. Terrace levels descend into shadows, where thousands of workers move like insects, their tools ringing against stone in a rhythm that never stops, never slows, never allows for rest or hope or anything resembling human dignity. This is where the pyramid begins, not in the grand visions of architects, but in the brutal reality of extraction. Every block that will rise to touch the sky must first be torn from the earth by hands that will never heal, backs that will never straighten, spirits that will never recover. Your first tool is a copper chisel, its edge dulled by countless hands before yours. Your second is a wooden mallet, its head cracked from endless impacts. Your third tool is something you don't yet understand, the gradual death of everything that once made you human. The master quarryman explains the process with the patience of a man who's watched thousands of workers break themselves on these stones. His name is Amenhotep, and his body is a map of every accident the quarry can inflict. Missing fingers, scarred arms, a back bent permanently from decades of lifting impossibly heavy blocks. Find the natural cracks, he says, running his fingers along the limestone face. The stone will tell you where it wants to split. Your job is to listen. But the stone speaks in whispers, and the overseer's whip speaks much louder. The stone offers patience, but the pyramid demands speed. The stone suggests careful technique, but survival requires immediate results. The technique sounds simple in theory. Drive wooden wedges into the natural fissures. Soak the wedges with precious water. As the wood expands, the stone cracks. Guide the crack with careful chisel work. Pray the block splits clean. In practice, it's a nightmare of precision under impossible conditions that would challenge demons. The sun beats down on the quarry floor like the concentrated hatred of gods. Temperatures climb past human endurance, turning the limestone into giant ovens that radiate heat from below while the sky burns from above. The glare is so intense it can blind a man if he looks at the wrong angle. You learn to work in the pre-dawn darkness, racing against the sun. But even then, the heat stored in the stone from the previous day burns through your sandals, blisters your palms, makes every breath feel like swallowing molten copper. The limestone dust is everywhere, inescapable as death itself. It coats your skin until you look like a ghost. It clogs your nose and throat until every breath tastes of blood. It fills your lungs with particles that turn each cough into agony and every night into a struggle to breathe. Some men try wrapping cloth around their faces, but it makes breathing even harder in the crushing heat. Others attempt to rinse their eyes with precious water, but the dust returns within minutes. There's no escape from the slow suffocation of stone powder. The tools are criminally inadequate for the work required. Copper chisels that bend against hard stone, wooden mallets that splinter and break, hemp ropes that fray under the weight of blocks heavier than houses. When a chisel breaks, and they break constantly, you must make do with whatever fragment remains. When a mallet splits, you bind it with strips of leather that offer little strength. When rope snaps, men die. You witness your first death on the third day. A limestone block, perhaps 2 tons of carved stone, slips from a damaged rope. The man guiding it below has no time to run. The sound is brief but final, the wet crunch of human bones being pulverized by the weight of eternity. His name was Seneb. He had 4 children back in a village by the Nile. You know this because he talked about them constantly, counting days until he could return home to teach them how to fish. The overseer records the incident in his ledger. 1 line, a number adjusted, nothing more. Seneb's body is dragged away, his tools passed to the next man in line. By evening, it's as if he never existed. But you remember, In a place designed to erase human individuality, you hold on to his name like a sacred trust. The quarry develops its own ecosystem of suffering. New workers stumble and struggle, their soft hands bleeding within hours, their backs seizing from unaccustomed strain. Veterans move with mechanical efficiency, their humanity worn away by repetition and heat. You learn to recognize the signs of different kinds of breakdown. The glassy eyes that mean heat stroke is setting in. The shallow breathing that indicates lung damage from stone dust. The 1,000-yard stare that means a man's spirit has simply given up. Some men lose fingers to poorly aimed chisels. Others crush their feet under falling debris. Many simply collapse, their bodies unable to process the combination of extreme heat, inadequate water, and physical demands that exceed human design specifications. Medical care is primitive and rationed. A few old women who know herbs. Some men with experience setting bones. Mostly, you're expected to heal yourself or die quietly enough not to disturb the work. Water is rationed with mathematical precision that values productivity over survival. Each man receives a cup at dawn, another at midday, a third at dusk. It's never enough, never clean, often warm enough to scald your throat. You learn to catch your own sweat in cupped hands, to lick moisture from stones at dawn, to treasure every drop like liquid gold. Some men trade their food rations for extra water. They don't last long, but they die more comfortably. The smart workers learn to conserve energy, working at a steady pace that avoids both the overseer's wrath and complete physical breakdown. The desperate ones work frantically, burning themselves out in days rather than weeks. You try to be smart, but desperation has a way of overwhelming wisdom when you're watching other men die around you and wondering if you'll survive another day in this stone-walled hell. Your body begins to transform in ways that horrify you. Muscles that once seemed strong waste away. Your skin turns from brown to black to something resembling leather. Your hands become collections of calluses wrapped around bones. But the stones don't care about your transformation. They remain hard, heavy, indifferent to human suffering. Each block demands the same careful extraction, the same risk of death or maiming, the same sacrifice of pieces of your soul. Night brings no relief from the heat or the horror. The barracks are stone ovens that trap the day's accumulated temperature. 30 men share a space designed for 10. The smell of unwashed bodies, infected wounds, and human waste creates an atmosphere that makes breathing a conscious effort. Sleep comes in fragments, interrupted by the moans of the injured, the whispers of the desperate, the nightmares of men who've seen too much death. You dream of cool water, soft bread, your wife's gentle hands. You wake to the sound of hammers against stone, ready to begin another day in the quarry of broken souls. Some workers develop strange attachments to their tools, talking to their chisels and mallets like old friends. Others fixate on tiny rituals, arranging stone chips in patterns, counting their breaths, reciting prayers to gods who seem to have abandoned this place entirely. You find yourself whispering your children's names during the worst moments, using their memory as armor against the quarry's assault on your humanity. It's not much protection, but it's all you have. The limestone waits, patient as death itself, indifferent to your pain, your exhaustion, your desperate hope that somehow this nightmare will end. The blocks must be cut, the pyramid must rise, and you must endure, because the alternative is a shallow grave in the workers' cemetery. The quarry has broken stronger men than you. It will probably break you too, eventually. But for now, you pick up your tools and begin another day of transforming solid stone into building blocks for eternity. Each block you cut is a small victory against the forces trying to destroy you. Each clean split is proof that you're still human, still skilled, still more than just another expendable body feeding the pyramid's endless hunger. The God King sleeps in his palace, dreaming of immortality, but you remain awake in the quarry, chipping away at stone and at the last remnants of the person you used to be. Tomorrow will bring new blocks to cut, new dangers to survive, new ways for the quarry to test whether you deserve to live another day. The limestone is patient, the pyramid is hungry, and you are caught between them, trying to remain human in a place designed to grind humanity into dust. The sun over ancient Egypt is not just hot, it's vindictive, a burning eye of divine wrath that watches your suffering with cosmic indifference, growing stronger as you grow weaker, blazing brighter as hope dims in your heart. By mid-morning, the limestone blocks radiate heat like forged stones, fresh from the fire. The sand burns through whatever remains of your sandals. The air shimmers with waves that make distant workers look like spirits dancing in the flames of purgatory. This is not just weather. This is systematic torture administered by the sky itself. You've learned the mathematics of starvation. Each day brings exactly 3 cups of water and 2 portions of food. It's calculated with scientific precision to keep you alive enough to work, but never healthy enough to resist. The water tastes of mud, minerals, and desperation. Sometimes there are green streaks floating in it, algae from the containers where it sits baking in the sun. Other times, it carries the metallic tang of blood from the copper vessels that serve as your only drinking cups. But you drink it gratefully, desperately, knowing that the next ration is 8 hours away. 8 hours might as well be 8 lifetimes when your body is dissolving from within. The food is a masterpiece of calculated cruelty. Bread baked so hard it can crack teeth, mixed with sand to make the grain stretch further. Each bite grinds against your mouth, wearing down your teeth, grain by grain, month by month, year by year. Your morning portion, one flat loaf that could serve as a weapon, and an onion so old it's more rot than vegetable. The bread is your main sustenance, but eating it is like chewing gravel mixed with hope. The onion provides moisture your body craves, but it's often partially spoiled, burning your throat and making your eyes water, even as you're grateful for any liquid. At midday, if the overseers are feeling generous, or if productivity quotas have been exceeded, there might be a thin soup made from lentils and barley. More often, it's just water flavored with whatever scraps the guards consider too rotten for their own consumption. You learn to savor each drop, each grain, each morsel as if it were a feast prepared by gods, because in this place, it might as well be. Your body begins to consume itself with methodical efficiency. The muscles you built as a farmer melt away like ice in the desert sun. Your ribs begin to show through skin stretched tight over a shrinking frame. The constant hunger creates a fog in your mind that makes thinking difficult, remembering painful, hoping almost impossible. You forget simple things: the color of your wife's eyes, the sound of your children's laughter, the taste of bread baked with love instead of sand. Some workers obsess over food with the intensity of religious devotion. They describe elaborate meals in loving detail, their eyes bright with fever and fantasy. They plan impossible feasts they'll prepare when they return home, if they return home, assuming home still exists. Others go silent, conserving energy by shutting down everything non-essential. They move like sleepwalkers, responding only to direct commands, saving their strength for the basic mechanics of survival. The heat creates its own ecosystem of suffering that would challenge the stamina of demons. Your sweat evaporates before it can cool you, leaving behind salt crystals that cut your skin like tiny knives. Your lips crack and bleed, creating wounds that the sand attacks with microscopic violence. Heat stroke becomes a daily lottery where everyone buys tickets, but nobody wants to win. Men collapse without warning, their bodies simply declaring independence from consciousness. Some recover with rest and shade, if they're valuable enough to deserve both. Others die, their last words usually desperate calls for water or mothers they'll never see again. The work doesn't pause for heat exhaustion, dehydration, or the inconvenience of human frailty. The pyramid has a schedule, and schedules don't acknowledge the limitations of flesh and blood. If you can't work, someone else will take your place. If you can't stand, you'll be dragged aside to make room for those who can. The overseers have developed sophisticated techniques for distinguishing between genuine collapse and malingering. They know exactly how much the human body can endure before it simply stops functioning. They've had thousands of test subjects to perfect their knowledge. Disease spreads through the worker camps like fire through papyrus. Dysentery from contaminated water turns your insides into liquid agony. Fevers from infected wounds cook your brain until you can't remember your own name. Respiratory infections from constant dust turn every breath into a battle you're slowly losing. The medical care is as rationed as the food and water. A few old women who know which plants might ease pain. Some men with experience setting bones badly. Mostly, you're expected to heal yourself or die quietly enough not to disturb the work schedules. Minor cuts become major infections when your body lacks the resources to fight them. Blisters turn into open sores that won't heal because healing requires nutrition you'll never receive. The constant malnutrition means your body can't repair the daily damage inflicted by tools, stones, and systematic brutality. You watch men die from infections that would be minor inconveniences back in your village. A splinter becomes blood poisoning. A twisted ankle becomes a death sentence when you can't work and can't heal. The psychological effects of constant hunger and heat are as devastating as the physical ones. Men begin to hallucinate, not just mirages in the desert, but visions in their minds. They see families who aren't there, food that doesn't exist, relief that will never come. Some develop obsessive attachments to small objects, a smooth stone, a piece of rope, a broken tool. These talismans become more precious than gold, representing connection to sanity in a world designed to drive men mad. You find yourself having conversations with your wife even though she's hundreds of miles away. Full discussions about things you'll do when you return, places you'll go, meals you'll share. The fact that she can't answer doesn't matter. The sound of your own voice helps you remember you're still human. But sometimes you catch yourself answering for her, providing responses you imagine she'd give. That's when you know the heat and hunger are winning the war for your sanity. The nights bring little relief from the heat or the hunger. The stones that baked all day radiate warmth until nearly dawn. The barracks are ovens that trap body heat and the smell of 30 unwashed, sick, dying men. Sleep becomes a form of escape, but even dreams are contaminated by your waking nightmare. You dream of water, only to wake with your tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth. You dream of food, only to wake with your stomach cramping in emptiness. The worst dreams are of home, your wife's cooking, your children's laughter, the cool shade of palm trees by the Nile. You wake from these dreams not with sadness, but with rage, fury at the unbearable contrast between memory and reality. Some men stop sleeping entirely, afraid of dreams that make waking life even more unbearable. They sit in the darkness with eyes wide open, counting their breaths, rationing their thoughts, preparing for another day of systematic destruction. Yet somehow, most workers endure. Day after day, cup after cup, crust after crust. Not because they're strong, but because the alternative, giving up, requires more energy than they possess. The pyramid grows taller, but with every stone laid, it becomes more of a tomb, not just for the pharaoh, but for the souls lost to its hunger. As the pyramid rises, so does the weight of its truth. No glory is ever built without sacrifice, and you survive another day in hell, held together by nothing more than the stubborn refusal to let hope die completely. Your body has become a map of deprivation. Every rib visible, every joint prominent, every muscle reduced to the minimum required for basic function. You look like a skeleton wrapped in leather, animated by will alone. But your hands still grip the tools, your back still bends to lift the blocks, your feet still carry you from quarry to construction site. Because stopping means death, and death here comes slowly, painfully, without dignity or remembrance. The heat and hunger are not accidents of construction. They're not unfortunate side effects of ambitious architecture. They're deliberate features of a system designed to extract maximum labor from expendable human resources. The pharaoh's immortality requires your mortality. His eternal glory demands your temporal suffering. His divine ascension is built on the foundation of your very human descent into hell. And tomorrow, when the sun rises like a curse upon the desert, you'll wake to the sound of construction horns. You'll receive your ration of contaminated water and sand-filled bread. You'll pick up tools that are slowly destroying your hands and begin another day of building eternity for someone else. Because that's what you've become, a machine for transforming human life into stone monuments, a device for converting flesh and blood into architectural achievement, a tool for building immortality out of mortality. The heat waits, the hunger endures, and you continue, because continuing is all you know how to do anymore. They come at dawn like carrion birds circling a battlefield, dressed in fine linen, while you wear rags, carrying staffs of authority while your hands hold only tools of suffering, speaking with the voice of divine command while you're forbidden to speak at all. The overseers, the middlemen of misery, the human face of divine cruelty. Their names are whispered with fear and hatred. Kentikawes the merciless, who counts dead workers like grain in a storehouse. Meraruka the mad, who beats men for smiling, claiming joy is theft from the pharaoh's glory. Hesiah the holy, who justifies every cruelty with speeches about divine will and cosmic necessity. Kentikawes walks the construction site like a general surveying a battlefield where she commands both armies. Her eyes miss nothing. A worker moving too slowly, a tool held incorrectly, a face that shows too much despair or too little fear. She carries a lotus staff tipped with gold, beautiful enough to belong in a temple. But she wields it like a weapon, striking shoulders, backs, skulls with practiced precision. She knows exactly how hard to hit, to motivate without permanently disabling valuable resources. The divine Pharaoh has spoken, she announces each morning, her voice carrying across the worksite like a curse. Today, we will move 60 blocks. Yesterday, we moved 57. The gods demand improvement. The mathematics of suffering. Always a quota. always falling short, always collective punishment for individual failure, always the promise that tomorrow's goal will be higher than today's achievement. The hierarchy among overseers is as rigid as the pyramid itself. At the top, the royal supervisors who answer only to the pharaoh's architects. Below them, the section chiefs who manage different aspects of construction. At the bottom, the gang leaders who work directly with groups of 20 workers. Each level adds its own cruelty to the system. The royal supervisors set impossible quotas. The section chiefs enforce them without question. The gang leaders take out their own frustrations on the workers beneath them, passing brutality down like a disease. You learn their moods like a farmer learns weather patterns. Kentikawe's is worst in the afternoon heat when the sun has baked her temper to the breaking point. Mereruka becomes violent when monthly reports are due and productivity numbers look bad. Hezekiah quotes scripture before ordering beatings, as if divine approval makes violence holy. Understanding these patterns becomes a survival skill more important than tool technique or stone knowledge. Recognizing the signs that predict punishment can mean the difference between working another day and joining the bodies in the desert graveyard. The rewards for compliance are meager crumbs designed to maintain the illusion of hope. An extra cup of water for exceeding quotas. A day of rest for outstanding service. Permission to send a message to family for exceptional loyalty. But these rewards are rare, unpredictable, often withdrawn without explanation. They dangle hope like bait on a hook, keeping you working when logic says you should lie down and die. The punishments are swift, public, and designed to terrorize as much as correct. A worker caught resting loses his water ration for 2 days. Someone who talks back receives 20 lashes delivered with ceremonial precision. Anyone who tries to escape simply disappears, their fate left to workers' imaginations. The public beatings are theatrical performances designed to break spirits as much as bodies. The victim is tied to a wooden frame in full view of all workers. The overseer explains the crime, quotes religious texts about obedience to divine authority, then administers punishment with ritualistic precision. You're forced to watch. Anyone who looks away receives their own introduction to the lash. The message burns itself into your brain. This could be you. This will be you if you step out of line. The sound of leather against flesh. The screams that start loud and fade to whimpers. The blood that pools in the sand and attracts flies that seem to mock human suffering. These images burn into your memory, ensuring you'll never forget the price of defiance. Some overseers take visible pleasure in the cruelty. You see it in their eyes during beatings, a gleam that has nothing to do with duty and everything to do with sadistic joy. They volunteer for punishment duty, request permission to inflict extra lashes, smile while men scream. Others seem to hate their role, but perform it anyway. They beat you with mechanical efficiency, their faces blank as stone, their movements routine as ritual. Perhaps they have families to feed. Perhaps they fear becoming workers themselves. Perhaps they've simply learned that survival requires the destruction of conscience. The worst overseers are former workers, men who've clawed their way up from the construction gangs by betraying their comrades, informing on escape attempts, volunteering to punish their former friends. They know exactly how much suffering the human body and spirit can endure because they've experienced every form of deprivation themselves. They've felt the hunger, the heat, the hopelessness, and they use that knowledge to calibrate their cruelty with scientific precision. The system is designed to destroy solidarity among workers before it can form. Overseers offer tiny privileges to those who inform on others. They promote the most ruthless workers to gang leader positions. They move people between groups constantly, preventing friendships from taking root. You learn not to trust anyone completely. The man working beside you might report a careless comment about the Pharaoh. Your tent mate might trade information about your health for an extra ration. Even kindness becomes suspect. Is that gesture genuine, or is someone gathering intelligence for the overseers? The overseers have their own fears that drive their brutality. They answer to architects and priests who judge them on quotas and timelines. A construction delay might cost them their positions. Too many worker deaths might require awkward explanations to higher authorities. So they walk a precise line between pushing workers to the breaking point and pushing them beyond it. They need you alive enough to work, but broken enough to comply. It's a delicate balance that requires constant adjustment and perpetual vigilance. You become an expert in reading their signals, like a priest reading omens. The way Kentikawes holds her staff indicates her mood for the day. The tone of Mereruka's morning announcements predicts the level of violence to expect. Hesaya's choice of prayers reveals how many beatings he's planning to order. This knowledge becomes armor against their unpredictability. If you can anticipate their moods, you might avoid becoming their target. If you can predict their reactions, you might survive their attention. The few moments of apparent humanity from overseers are more cruel than their open violence. When Kentikawes asks about your family, it's not compassion, it's intelligence gathering for future psychological torture. When Mereruka shares water during the hottest part of the day, he's creating debt that he'll collect later with interest. When Hesaya prays for your souls, he's reminding you that he controls your bodies completely. These glimpses of fake mercy are designed to create confusion, to make you doubt your own perceptions of reality. Maybe they're not so bad after all. Maybe you deserve this treatment. Maybe resistance is futile and acceptance is wisdom. It's gaslighting perfected into an art form, designed to make you complicit in your own destruction. The overseers sleep in comfortable quarters while you lie on stone floors. They eat fresh bread while you chew sand-filled crusts. They drink clean water while you're grateful for liquid that tastes of mud and desperation. But their privilege comes with its own chains. They're trapped in a system that requires them to destroy other human beings to maintain their own positions. They've traded their humanity for authority, their souls for survival. As night falls and the overseers retreat to their quarters, you're left with your pain, your hunger, your fear, but also with something they can't touch, the knowledge that beneath all the suffering they've inflicted, you're still human. They may control your body, your labor, your chances of survival, but they cannot control your memory of who you were before this place. They cannot control your dreams of who you might become again if you survive. And in the darkness, when even their eyes cannot penetrate the night, you hold on to that small, defiant truth. You are more than their tool. You are more than their victim. You are more than the sum of your suffering. You are still yourself. And that, despite everything they've done to erase it, remains something worth preserving. The overseers have made you smaller, weaker, more afraid, but they have not made you disappear entirely. And as long as some part of you remains unconquered, their victory is incomplete. Tomorrow will bring new cruelties, new tests of your capacity to endure. But tonight, in the space between heartbeats, you remember who you used to be, and perhaps, if you're very lucky and very strong, who you might become again. Death stalks the pyramid construction site like a patient predator, taking workers in countless ways, each more horrible than the last. Sometimes it strikes swift as lightning. A rope snaps, a block falls, a life ends in the time it takes to draw a breath. More often, it comes slowly, methodically, like a torturer who understands that prolonged suffering serves as better entertainment than quick endings. You learn to recognize death's approach through signs that become as familiar as your own heartbeat. The glassy look in a man's eyes when his body starts shutting down. The way breathing changes when infection spreads through blood. The silence that falls over a worker who's decided he'd rather die than face another day in this stone hell. The injuries multiply like a plague that feeds on human flesh. Limestone blocks weighing thousands of pounds, moved by men whose strength has been systematically sapped by hunger and heat. Ropes that fray under loads no hemp was designed to bear. Tools that break without warning, sending metal shards into eyes and copper splinters into hands. Surfaces slick with sweat, blood, and the tears of men who've forgotten they're still capable of crying. Nebbit, once a proud craftsman, loses 3 fingers in the quarry, a cruel reminder of how quickly life can turn into misery. He stares at the gaping wound, not in pain, but in disbelief. The man who once shaped pottery with care now struggles to lift stone with trembling hands. His life, like his craft, is falling apart. The wound is wrapped in linen that was dirty before it touched his hand, and he's expected to return to work the next morning with his remaining fingers. The infection starts within hours, red streaks climbing his arm like angry serpents seeking his heart. He begs the overseers for clean water to wash the wound. They ignore him. He offers to trade his food rations for proper treatment. They laugh. He prays to every god whose name he remembers. The gods remain silent. By the 4th day, fever sets in, and Nebbit begins speaking to family members who aren't there. By the 7th day, he's delirious, calling for his mother while his body burns from within. By the 10th day, he's dead, another casualty of the pyramid's appetite for human sacrifice. His body is dragged to the workers' graveyard, a field of unmarked mounds that spreads like a cancer at the edge of the construction site. No ceremony, no prayer. Just another number scratched off the productivity roster. The graveyard grows daily, sometimes hourly, during the worst periods. Some days, multiple mounds appear, like mushrooms after rain. During heat waves, the burial detail can't keep pace with the bodies, and corpses lie in the sun until they become health hazards that even the overseers can't ignore. You volunteer for burial duty sometimes. It earns you a small extra ration, and you need every scrap of food you can get. But it's also a duty to the dead, ensuring they have at least the dignity of being covered by earth before the desert wind scatters their bones. The graves are shallow because digging deep requires energy that living workers need for construction. The desert reclaims them quickly, redistributing sand until all trace of burial disappears. Only the workers remember where bodies lie, and workers die or leave, taking their memories with them. Within months, the graveyard becomes an unmarked wasteland where the wind whispers names that no one will ever speak again. The psychological casualties are as devastating as the physical ones, perhaps more. So because they're invisible to overseers who only care about productivity, men who simply stop responding to commands, their minds retreated to some internal refuge where pain can't follow. Others who work mechanically but speak to no one, communicating only in grunts and gestures. Some begin having conversations with people who aren't there, dead family members, childhood friends, gods who might be listening from whatever realm houses abandoned prayers. Senenmut was a scribe before recruitment brought him to this place, a man of learning and culture who could read hieroglyphs and calculate mathematical problems that challenged priests. But constant brutality wore away his education, like water wearing away stone. First, he stopped correcting others' grammar. Then, he stopped forming complete sentences. Eventually, he communicated only through gestures and sounds that barely qualified as human speech. He could still lift blocks, so the overseers kept him functional. But the man who once copied royal decrees and sacred texts died long before his body gave out. What remained was something else, a shell programmed only for labor, emptied of everything that once made him human. The workers developed their own crude medical practices, born from desperation and necessity. Mud poultices for wounds, applied with prayers to gods who seemed deaf to suffering. Willow bark tea for fever, when anyone can find willow bark in this wasteland. Bone-setting techniques learned through brutal trial and error on bodies that can't afford failure. An old man named Horus becomes the unofficial healer not through training, but through survival. He's outlasted more workers than anyone can count, and longevity here requires learning to patch bodies back together with whatever materials the desert provides. He teaches you to pack wounds with clean sand to stop bleeding, how to splint broken bones with scraps of wood and torn linen, which sparse plants growing at the site's edge might ease pain or reduce fever. But his most valuable knowledge is darker: how to recognize when someone is beyond help, when to waste precious resources on the dying, when mercy means easing passage to the afterlife rather than prolonging agony in this earthly hell. He shows you the look in a man's eyes when death has already claimed him, even though his heart still beats, the way breathing changes when the body begins shutting down systems, the silence that means a spirit has given up fighting. The rituals for the dead develop organically among workers who have no priests to guide them. When someone dies, his tent mates divide his possessions, not from greed, but from necessity. Every scrap of cloth, every chip of metal might mean the difference between life and death for someone else. They speak his name 3 times before burial, once for who he was before this place, once for what he accomplished despite impossible conditions, once to help his spirit find its way to whatever afterlife awaits workers who die building monuments to other men's immortality. It's not much of a ceremony, but it's something, an acknowledgement that he mattered, however briefly, a declaration that his death has meaning, even if that meaning is only witnessed by men who will probably join him soon. Sometimes someone remembers details about the dead man's life, his village, his family, a skill he possessed, or a joke he told. These fragments are shared like precious gifts, keeping his memory alive for a few more days before it too succumbs to the relentless demands of survival. The dreams of survivors become infected with death, like wounds exposed to desert sand. You dream of the graveyard expanding, swallowing the entire construction site until nothing remains but unmarked mounds stretching to the horizon. You dream of working alongside men you know are dead, their rotting hands still gripping tools, their hollow voices still responding to overseers' commands. Worst are the dreams where you die, but continue working. A ghost condemned to eternal labor, building pyramids for pharaohs who never existed, moving stones that turn to dust in your hands, forever trapped in a construction project that has no beginning and no end. You wake from these dreams gasping, touching your own face to make sure flesh still covers bone, checking your pulse to confirm your heart still beats, however weakly. The living begin to resemble the dead more each day, skin stretched tight over bones, eyes sunken deep in skulls, movements mechanical and slow. The line between life and death becomes blurred when many workers are breathing but no longer truly alive. You catch glimpses of yourself in the still water of morning rations. The face looking back is barely recognizable. Your father's eyes in a stranger's skull, your mother's mouth speaking words she never taught you. Who are you becoming in this place? What will remain of the man who once tended fields by the Nile, who once held his children and whispered lullabies, who once believed the world contained more joy than sorrow? The pyramid is killing you in layers. First your body, then your mind, finally your soul. And the most terrifying part is how willingly you're participating in your own destruction, because the alternative is immediate death rather than gradual dissolution. The overseers keep meticulous records of the dead for their reports to higher authorities. Names, ages, cause of death, replacement needs. The deceased become statistics that inform construction schedules and resource allocation, but they don't record the full cost. The dreams that die with each worker, the skills and knowledge lost forever, the families who will never know what happened to fathers and sons who simply vanished into the pyramid's hungry maw. As you help carry another body to the graveyard, a young man who might have been your son's age, dead from heat stroke and heartbreak, you realize something that chills you more than the desert night. You're becoming numb to death. The shock you felt at the first corpse has faded. The grief for fallen comrades has been replaced by relief that it wasn't you, gratitude that you survived another day. This emotional callousing is necessary for survival, but it's also another small death, the death of compassion, of connection, of the part of you that grieves for strangers because they are human like you. The pyramid demands this sacrifice too, not just your labor, but your capacity to feel, not just your strength, but your soul. Night falls over the field of the dead, and tomorrow will bring new bodies, new grief, new numbers for the overseer's ledgers. The pyramid grows taller with each death, built not just of stone, but of the accumulated weight of human sacrifice. You return to your quarters, knowing sleep will bring dreams of the dead. But you also know morning will bring another day of survival, another small victory against the forces trying to erase you. For now, that's enough. It has to be. In the darkness, you whisper the names of the dead, not their real names, which you never knew, but the names you gave them in your heart. Seneb the father, Nebet the brave, Senenmut the scholar. They live now only in your memory. When you die, they'll die again. But tonight, in the space between heartbeats, they exist because you remember them. And perhaps that's the only immortality any of you will ever achieve. Rebellion in the shadow of the pyramid begins not with grand gestures or heroic speeches, but with whispers. Fragments of defiance passed between workers during the brief moments when overseers look elsewhere. Seeds of resistance planted in the darkness before dawn, when even guards grow lazy with routine. The first act of rebellion is often the smallest. Taking an extra moment to rest when you should be working, sharing water when regulations forbid it, speaking a dead friend's name aloud when you're supposed to maintain silence. But even these tiny acts of humanity carry enormous risk in a place where humanity itself has been criminalized. Kemweset was the first to speak what others only thought. During the noon rest period, when heat made even overseers seek shade, he said it quietly but clearly, "This is not service to the gods. This is murder." The words hung in the superheated air like incense smoke. Other workers looked around nervously, checking for informants, measuring distances to the nearest overseer's position, calculating whether someone had heard this dangerous truth spoken aloud. But no one disagreed, and in that silence, rebellion took root like a desert plant finding water in stone. The network grows slowly, carefully, like a spider's web built strand by strand in darkness. A shared glance between workers who've watched friends die needlessly. A whispered name in the pre-dawn darkness. A hand extended to help when help is forbidden by regulations designed to keep workers isolated and suspicious. You find yourself part of this underground without ever choosing to join. The moment you share your water ration with a dying man. The moment you slow your work pace to match a companion who's struggling. The moment you meet another worker's eyes and see your own anger reflected there. Communication develops its own secret language born from necessity and desperation. The rhythm of hammers against stone becomes code. Certain patterns meaning overseer approaching, others signaling safe to talk. Hand signals disguised as work gestures. Even the arrangement of stone chips can carry messages for those who know how to read them. Information spreads through this network like water finding cracks in limestone. Which overseers are most brutal? Which guards might accept bribes? Which workers are informants? Who's planning something dangerous? The knowledge that others share your rage becomes its own form of sustenance, more nourishing than the meager rations. You're not alone in your suffering. You're not the only one who questions the divine right of pharaohs to consume human lives for their eternal glory. This shared anger creates connections that transcend the isolation the pyramid system is designed to maintain. Workers begin to think of themselves not as individual victims, but as part of something larger, something the overseers can't completely control. The first organized resistance is practical rather than political. A work slowdown disguised as heat exhaustion. Tools that develop mysterious flaws more frequently. Ropes that seem to weaken at critical moments through no fault of their makers. The sabotage is subtle enough to appear natural, the inevitable result of overworked men using inadequate equipment under impossible conditions. But it's coordinated, systematic, designed to cost the project time and resources. The overseers notice the decline in productivity, of course. Quotas slip week after week. Construction schedules fall behind targets. Accident rates increase in patterns that seem too convenient to be coincidental. But the resistance is subtle enough that they can't prove organized rebellion. They suspect coordination, but can't identify leaders. They know something is wrong, but can't pinpoint the source. Punishments increase in frequency and severity as overseers try to intimidate the network into revealing itself. They beat random workers, hoping to break someone who will confess and name conspirators. They reduce rations for entire work gangs, creating collective suffering designed to turn workers against each other. But the resistance adapts, becomes more careful, goes deeper underground. Some workers crack under the increased pressure. Amenhotep, driven beyond endurance by hunger, heat, and the constant threat of violence, finally screams what everyone thinks but no one dares say, that the pharaoh is a murderer, that the pyramid is a monument to ego built on bones, that the gods themselves would curse anyone who participates in such blasphemy. His punishment is swift, public, and designed to terrorize. Beaten until his back resembles raw meat. Denied water for 3 days while working in the brutal sun. Finally dragged to the workers' graveyard while still breathing and buried alive as a warning to others. But his words echo in workers' minds long after his voice has been silenced. Someone finally said it aloud. Someone finally named the truth that everyone knows but no one dares speak. His sacrifice has meaning only if the resistance continues. The network becomes more careful after Amenhotep's martyrdom, but also more determined. His death proves that open rebellion is suicide, but it also proves that the truth has power that terrifies the overseers. Plans begin to form in whispered conversations that take place in the most dangerous location possible: the workers' graveyard. Men volunteer for burial duty not just for extra rations, but for the chance to speak freely among the dead. Overseers rarely venture into the field of unmarked graves. Too many bad omens, too much reminder of the project's human cost, too much evidence of their own complicity in mass murder. Among the burial mounds, plans take shape like mirages in the desert heat. What if enough workers simply stopped working on the same day? What could the overseers do? Beat everyone. Kill the entire workforce. The pyramid needs laborers more than laborers need the pyramid. It's a fantasy, of course. The workers are too scattered, too watched, too weakened by hunger and exhaustion to coordinate anything so ambitious. But the fantasy gives hope, and hope keeps men alive when logic says they should surrender. Some resistance takes the form of preserving memory against systematic erasure. Workers carving names into hidden surfaces, not their own names, which might be discovered, but the names of the dead, creating a record that the overseer's ledgers don't contain. Others focus on maintaining humanity through small rituals that the pyramid is designed to destroy. Sharing stories of home during rest periods. Teaching children's songs to men who may never see children again. Keeping alive the parts of themselves that stone and heat can't consume. The most effective sabotage comes from skilled workers who understand structural engineering, rope making, and tool construction. These men have value beyond mere muscle, which gives them slightly better treatment and more opportunities for subtle destruction. A mathematical calculation deliberately wrong by fractions that will cause problems later. Joints cut with almost invisible flaws that will weaken over time. Tools crafted to look perfect but fail at critical moments years after their makers are dead. Maketra is one of these skilled saboteurs, a master rope maker who understands exactly how hemp fibers behave under stress. He weaves weakness into his strongest-looking ropes, not enough to fail immediately, but enough to snap when the loads exceed certain weights. He knows that every rope failure means death for the workers below, but he also knows that enough failures might force the overseers to question the project itself. Each death from his sabotaged ropes is a sacrifice to the god of rebellion. The discovery of organized resistance is inevitable. Too many workers involved, too many small acts of defiance adding up to obvious patterns, too many whispered conversations overheard by the wrong ears or reported by workers desperate enough to trade information for better treatment. The crackdown, when it comes, is brutal and comprehensive enough to make previous punishments look like gentle corrections. Mass interrogations conducted with systematic torture. Overseers use techniques learned from military campaigns: sleep deprivation, controlled drowning in the precious water supply, exposure to the full desert sun while bound and helpless. Public execution sessions designed to extract confessions and break the network's structure. Workers are forced to watch as suspected rebels are slowly flayed alive, their screams echoing across the construction site as a warning to any who might harbor thoughts of defiance. Some network members are identified and made examples that will be remembered for generations. Crucified at the construction site as living warnings, left to die slowly in the desert heat while their comrades work below. Their cries for water, become part of the daily soundtrack of pyramid construction. Others simply disappear into the desert, their fate left to workers' imaginations, which often invent horrors worse than reality. The uncertainty becomes its own form of terror, not knowing whether disappeared friends died quickly or are still suffering somewhere in the wasteland. The most valuable conspirators, skilled craftsmen who can't easily be replaced, face punishments designed to break their spirits without destroying their utility. Psychological torture that leaves them functional but compliant. Meketra is forced to watch as his younger brother, also a worker, is slowly buried alive in sand. The boy's muffled screams continue for hours. Meketra is told that if he ever sabotages another rope, his remaining family members will suffer the same fate, but more slowly. But resistance, like water, finds ways to survive even the most systematic attempts at elimination. Leadership becomes more distributed, so no single arrest can destroy the organization. Communication becomes more subtle, harder to detect and decode. The rebellion doesn't die. It evolves, adapts, learns from its failures. Workers develop new signals, new methods of coordination, new ways to share information without detection. The overseers declare victory and resume normal operations, but they know their triumph is temporary. You can see it in their increased vigilance, their paranoid scanning of workers' faces for signs of defiance, their tendency to interpret any delay or accident as potential sabotage. They've learned something they didn't want to know, that even the most brutalized humans retain the capacity for rebellion, that oppression breeds resistance as naturally as heat breeds thirst. Guard rotations increase. Surprise inspections become routine. Collective punishments are imposed for the smallest infractions. The atmosphere becomes more oppressive than ever, but also more brittle. Fear works both ways. The overseers are now afraid of the workers they've created. In the workers' quarters, despite increased surveillance and the memory of recent punishments, new whispers begin. Quieter now, more careful, but carrying the same message that Kemwaset first spoke aloud. This is not service to the gods. This is murder. And murderers, no matter how powerful, eventually face judgment. The network reforms around new principles, no large gatherings, no written communications, no permanent leaders, just cells of 3 or 4 men who trust each other completely, connected to other cells through single intermediaries who know only what they need to know. The resistance learns patience. Instead of dramatic gestures that invite retaliation, they focus on grinding, persistent pressure, tools that wear out slightly faster than they should, stones that crack along unexpected lines, work that proceeds just slowly enough to frustrate quotas without triggering punishment. Death by 1,000 small cuts, administered by men who have learned that survival requires subtlety. The pyramid continues to rise, block by block, year by year. The Pharaoh's dream takes shape in stone that will outlast empires. But built into its very foundation is something the architects never planned for: the compressed anger of thousands of men who never chose to be there. That anger will outlast the Pharaoh, outlast the dynasty, outlast the civilization that created it. It will become part of the pyramid itself, as permanent as the limestone blocks, as enduring as the mathematical precision of its angles. And perhaps thousands of years later, when archaeologists study the pyramid and marvel at its construction, they'll discover those hidden carvings, those names carved in defiance, those small acts of rebellion preserved in stone. The proof that resistance, however small, however futile, however brutally crushed, is part of human nature. That even in hell, hope refuses to die completely. The workers who survive the crackdown are different men than those who first whispered Kemwasit's words. Harder, more careful, but not broken. The rebellion taught them something the overseers can't undo, that they have power, however limited, however dangerous to exercise. The power to say no, the power to remember, the power to preserve truth in the face of lies. Tonight, as you lie on your stone bed, surrounded by men who've learned to sleep with one eye open, you carry that knowledge like a flame hidden in your chest. The overseers may control your body, your labor, your chances of survival. But they cannot control your memory. They cannot erase what you've learned about yourself and others. They cannot kill the part of you that refuses to accept that suffering is divine will. The pyramid will stand for millennia, but so will the memory of those who resisted its construction. In every perfectly fitted joint, there's a whisper of defiance. In every precisely angled passage, there's an echo of rebellion. The Pharaoh claimed he was building for eternity. He was right, but not in the way he imagined. He built a monument not just to his glory, but to the indomitable human spirit that even divine authority cannot completely crush. And in the darkness, as guards patrol between the barracks and overseers plan tomorrow's quotas, that spirit endures. Quieter now, more hidden, but alive, waiting for its next chance to whisper, "This is not service to the gods, this is murder." And we remember, the interior of the pyramid is not a sacred space. It's a labyrinth of death, designed by architects who understood that the Pharaoh's eternal rest required the temporal suffering of everyone who built his tomb. Corridors barely wide enough for a man's shoulders, passages that seem to lead nowhere, chambers that echo with your own terrified breathing. These aren't mysterious sacred spaces filled with divine mystery. They're death traps where you must work in conditions that would challenge the endurance of demons. The interior construction begins when the pyramid reaches perhaps half its final height. Teams of workers must move inside to build the chambers that will house the Pharaoh's body and treasure. The burial chamber, the Queen's chamber, the grand gallery that will showcase architectural genius to visitors who will never come. You are selected for interior work, not as an honor, but because you've survived longer than most. The overseers need experienced workers for the most dangerous and technically demanding tasks. Your endurance has qualified you for a more sophisticated form of suffering. The first time you enter the pyramid, through the descending passage, the weight of stone above you feels like the judgment of malevolent gods. Millions of tons of limestone held in place by engineering principles you don't understand, and architectural calculations that seem more like magic than mathematics. The passage slopes downward at an angle that makes every step feel like falling toward the center of the earth. Oil lamps provide the only illumination, their flames dancing with your breathing, creating shadows that move like living things in the suffocating darkness. The air inside is thick, stale, poisoned with the breath and sweat of too many workers laboring in spaces never meant for human occupation. Each breath tastes of limestone dust, oil smoke, and the fierce sweat of men who know they may never see sunlight again. Oxygen becomes precious as gold. Men faint from lack of air, and there's nowhere to carry them except back through passages that claim their own victims. Some workers develop a blue tinge around their lips, the color of slow suffocation in a stone tomb. The heat inside is different from the desert sun's assault. Not the direct blast of divine wrath, but trapped, humid warmth that comes from dozens of workers laboring in enclosed spaces with no ventilation. Your sweat has nowhere to evaporate. It pools in your clothes, drips from your face, makes every surface slippery with the possibility of death. The work itself is precision torture designed by architects who never held tools or lifted stones. Each block must be positioned with mathematical exactness that allows no margin for error. The interior chambers require joints so tight that a knife blade can't slip between stones. You learn to work by feel as much as sight in the dancing lamplight. The way a block settles when properly positioned. The sound a joint makes when correctly aligned. The vibration through the floor when something is wrong, terribly wrong, and tons of stone are about to shift in ways that will kill everyone in the passage. The most dangerous assignment is moving massive granite blocks through the ascending passage to the king's chamber. These stones, each weighing several tons, must be lifted vertically through shafts designed with tolerances that leave no room for human error. Workers position themselves beneath suspended blocks, guiding them into place while knowing that a single rope failure means instant death. Not clean death, crushing that leaves families with something to bury, but obliteration that leaves only stains on stone. You develop supernatural awareness of rope sounds that might save your life. The subtle change in tension that means hemp fibers are beginning to separate. The slight stretch that indicates a load approaching the breaking point. The whisper of fiber against stone that might be the last sound you ever hear. Seneb dies when a rope snaps without warning during the construction of the Grand Gallery. A granite block, meant for the king's chamber, falls 3 stories through the shaft, crushing him so completely that identification requires checking which workers fail to report for the next shift. Work continues immediately. His blood is wiped from the stones with rags that will be used to clean other surfaces. His tools are passed to the next man in line. The block that killed him is lifted again, positioned again, secured again, as if his death was just another engineering problem solved through applied violence. The passages become psychological torture chambers designed to break minds as efficiently as stone breaks bodies. Narrow corridors that seem to close in as you work. The constant weight of stone above, becoming a crushing presence in thoughts. Some workers develop terror of enclosed spaces so severe they can't enter the pyramid without collapsing in screaming fits. Others become obsessed with the architecture, spending rest periods tracing walls with their fingers, trying to understand the purpose behind every angle and measurement. They develop elaborate theories about the pyramid's spiritual significance, its astronomical alignments, its role in the pharaoh's journey to divine immortality. You learn that the pyramid contains passages that lead nowhere, dead ends designed to confuse tomb robbers, false chambers meant to misdirect future explorers, corridors that exist only to demonstrate the architect's contempt for human comprehension. Some of these purposeless spaces become accidental tombs for workers who lose their way in oil lamp darkness. Their bodies are discovered months later when the smell becomes noticeable, mummified by dry air and transformed into unintentional decorations for the pharaoh's eternal home. The interior mapping is kept secret from workers like you, known only to master architects who will take their knowledge to graves more comfortable than yours. You see only small sections, understand only immediate tasks. The overall design remains mysterious, ensuring that escaped workers can't reveal structural weaknesses to potential tomb robbers. The air shafts provide minimal relief from suffocating atmosphere. These narrow channels, supposedly designed to help the pharaoh's soul reach the stars, barely move enough air to keep oil lamps burning. Workers sometimes collapse from oxygen deprivation, their bodies carried out through passages barely wide enough for coffins. Some chambers become mass graves by accident. A section collapses during construction. A passage floods during rare desert storms. Workers are trapped, their voices echoing through the stone maze until they fade to silence. Their bodies are left where they fall. Removing them would require dismantling walls that can't be rebuilt. They become permanent residents of the Pharaoh's tomb, achieving the immortality they never sought. The most feared assignment is working in the descending passage that angles down into bedrock beneath the pyramid. This corridor requires moving stones through spaces so tight that workers must crawl like animals, breathing air that grows thinner with each foot of depth. Men who work the descending passage develop a particular madness. The combination of claustrophobia, oxygen deprivation, and constant fear creates hallucinations more vivid than reality. They see dead pharaohs walking the corridors. They hear gods commanding them to work faster, dig deeper, sacrifice more. The interior work reveals the pyramid's true purpose, not just as a tomb, but as a machine designed to consume human life with maximum efficiency. Every architectural feature seems calculated to maximize suffering while maintaining productivity. Passages too narrow for comfort, but wide enough for stone transport. Chambers too low for standing, but tall enough for construction. Shafts too steep for safety, but sloped correctly for moving massive blocks. You begin to understand that the pyramid isn't being built despite its human cost. It's being built because of it. The suffering is part of the design. The death is part of the function. The pharaoh's immortality doesn't just require your sacrifice, it feeds on it. As you work deeper inside the pyramid, moving stones through passages that feel like the intestines of a stone beast, you feel the weight of more than limestone above you. You feel the weight of divine ambition, of systematic cruelty, of a civilization that treats human beings as raw materials to be consumed in the service of eternal glory. The pyramid isn't just your workplace, it's your universe, your reality, your entire reason for existence, reduced to the movement of stones through dark passages. You're becoming part of it, integrated into its structure, transformed into something that can survive in spaces designed to crush the human spirit. When your shift inside finally ends, when you emerge into the harsh desert sunlight that once seemed like punishment, you realize something fundamental has changed. The man who entered the pyramid is not the same as the one who exits. Part of you remains inside, trapped in those dark passages, moving stones for a dead pharaoh's dream of immortality. You've been partially mummified while still alive, preserved not in bandages, but in stone, becoming part of the monument you're building. You are no longer just building the pyramid. The pyramid is building you, reshaping you into something that can function in its dark heart, something capable of survival in spaces designed to destroy everything human and decent. And tomorrow, you'll go back inside, because the pyramid isn't finished with its work on you, because your transformation into living stone serves the pharaoh's vision of eternity. The pyramid will stand for millennia, and part of you will stand with it, not as honored craftsman or remembered worker, but as absorbed suffering, integrated pain, fossilized despair that becomes part of the structure itself. The pharaoh sought immortality through stone. He achieved it through the systematic destruction of everything that makes immortality worth having. And in the darkness of interior passages, your ghost and the ghosts of thousands of other workers move forever through corridors of their own creation, building monuments to their own forgetting. Welcome to forever. Welcome to the pharaoh's vision of eternity. Welcome to the inside of divine madness made manifest in limestone and human bones. The pyramid is complete, but its work on you has only just begun. 27 years, 9,855 days, 236,052 hours of systematic human destruction disguised as divine construction. And then one morning that feels no different from the 9,854 mornings before it, the pyramid is complete. The final block is set in place at the pyramid's apex. A single piece of polished granite that catches the sun's rays and reflects them across the desert like a beacon of divine achievement. The architects declare the work finished. The priests perform dedication ceremonies. The Pharaoh surveys his eternal resting place and pronounces it good. But what happens to you? What happens to the tens of thousands of workers who've given their youth, their health, their humanity, their lives to this monument, to one man's terror of death? The dismissal is as sudden and brutal as everything else about the pyramid project. No ceremony acknowledging decades of sacrifice. No gratitude for labor that built one of the wonders of the world. No recognition that human beings made this achievement possible. Simply an announcement that construction is complete and workers are no longer needed. You are dismissed like tools being returned to storage, discarded like materials that have served their purpose. Some men weep with relief. After years of dreaming about freedom while expecting to die, the reality of survival feels like resurrection. They'll return to families they haven't seen in decades, to villages that may not remember them, to lives that may no longer have room for who they've become. Others face the announcement with terror that surprises them. The pyramid has become their entire world, brutal but familiar. The routine of systematic suffering, the hierarchy of overseers, the daily struggle for survival, it's all they know anymore. Freedom feels more frightening than captivity. The logistics of dismissal are as cruel as everything else about the pyramid system. Workers are given 3 days' rations and pointed toward roads leading back to their home districts. No transportation for bodies broken by decades of labor. No compensation beyond survival. No assistance with the journey through desert that many are too weak to complete. You're handed a small roll of papyrus, a document supposedly confirming your service and entitling you to tax relief back home. But you can't read it, and you suspect village scribes won't honor it anyway. It's just another piece of paper from a system that used you completely and discarded you casually. The walk home takes longer than the original journey to Giza. Your body, systematically destroyed by decades of inhuman labor, can't maintain the pace of a healthy farmer. Your feet, adapted to hot sand and stone, blister on uneven paths. Your eyes, accustomed to the pyramid's glare, struggle with the green fields and palm trees of the Nile Valley. But physical challenges are nothing compared to psychological ones. Who are you now? The man who left this place decades ago died long ago, consumed by the pyramid's appetite for human sacrifice. The farmer, the father, the husband, those identities were stripped away, block by block, year by year. What remains is a pyramid builder in a world that no longer has pyramids to build. You possess skills that have no application, knowledge that has no value, experience that no one wants to hear about. Some workers don't make it home. They collapse on the roads, their bodies finally surrendering after years of postponed breakdown. Others simply disappear, unable to face the possibility that home might reject the strangers they've become. A few turn back toward Giza, drawn by the only life they understand. They become permanent residents of the abandoned worker village, eking out existence by scavenging materials from the construction site. telling stories to anyone who'll listen about the days when they built monuments for gods. Your own village, when you finally reach it, is both exactly as you remember and completely foreign. The same mud brick houses, the same narrow streets, the same sound of the Nile lapping against reed boats. But faces are older or gone entirely. Children you remember are now adults with children of their own. Your wife, if she survived and didn't remarry, approaches you like a dangerous stranger wearing familiar features. The reunion with your family is heartbreaking in its awkwardness. Your wife studies you like she would examine a wild animal, cautious, ready to flee, uncertain whether you're the man she married or something else wearing his face. Your children, now grown, don't recognize the scarred, broken man claiming to be their father. The hands that once held them gently are now twisted claws, marked by decades of rope burns and stone cuts. You try to explain where you've been, what you've done, what you've survived. But words fail completely. How do you describe the pyramid to someone who's never seen a structure taller than 2 stories? How do you convey the scale of suffering to people who've never experienced systematic brutality? How do you make them understand that you helped build one of the wonders of the world, and it nearly killed everything human inside you? Sleep becomes impossible in your old home. Your body, conditioned by decades of stone floors, can't adjust to soft bedding. Your mind, trained to wake at construction horns, startles at every night sound that isn't the familiar rhythm of pyramid work. But worse are the dreams. You're back at Giza, moving blocks that never get lighter, following orders from overseers who've been dead for years, working on a pyramid that grows taller every night but never seems finished. You wake your family with screams they can't understand, speaking names of dead companions they never met, reliving traumas they can't comprehend or share. The village has no place for a pyramid builder. The skills you developed, precision stonework, large-scale construction, survival under impossible conditions, have no application in a farming community. You're overqualified for simple labor, but underqualified for anything requiring knowledge that remained static during your decades of absence. Other villagers treat you with a mixture of awe and suspicion. You've accomplished something extraordinary, helped build one of the wonders of the world, but you've also been changed by something they can't understand and don't trust. You're living proof of what divine glory costs, a walking reminder of the human price of architectural immortality. Some evenings, you try to tell stories about the pyramid, about the scale of construction, the precision of engineering, the devotion required to create something so magnificent. But your audience sees only the cost, the broken man before them, trying to justify decades of suffering with tales of architectural glory. Your children listen politely, but you see fear in their eyes. This stranger, claiming their father's name, speaks of horrors they can't imagine, describes experiences that sound more like fever dreams than memories. The pyramid has marked you in ways that can't be hidden or healed. Your posture, permanently bent from years of lifting impossible weights. Your skin, scarred by rope burns and stone cuts that tell the story of systematic brutality. Your voice, roughened by breathing limestone dust until your lungs became part stone themselves. These physical markers separate you from the community as surely as walls. You're living evidence of what pyramid construction required, walking testimony to the human cost of divine ambition. Months pass in painful adjustment. Your family tries to accommodate your presence, but the effort exhausts everyone. You attempt to resume your old life, but farming feels pointless after building monuments that will last forever. The daily routines that once gave life meaning now seem trivial, temporary, insignificant compared to the eternal achievement you helped create. Some former pyramid workers find each other in taverns and markets, drawn together by shared trauma and mutual understanding. You form informal groups, meeting to share stories that no one else wants to hear. These gatherings become lifelines. Only another pyramid builder understands the pride and horror of what you accomplished. Only someone who lived through the same hell can appreciate both the magnificence and the cost of what you created. You compare scars, like soldiers compare battle wounds. You name the dead, like priests recite prayers. You argue about construction details with the passion of men who paid for their knowledge with pieces of their souls. But even these connections fade as time passes. Some men drink themselves to death, unable to live with their memories. Others migrate to new construction projects, chasing the only work they understand. A few find peace in isolation, becoming hermits who avoid human contact entirely. The pyramid stands, eternal and magnificent, achieving exactly what the Pharaoh intended. Tourists come to marvel at it. Scholars study its engineering. Priests perform rituals in its shadow. But the men who built it scatter like sand in the wind, their stories untold, their sacrifice unremembered, their expertise unwanted in a world that prefers myths to reality. Years later, when you're old and closer to death than life, you sometimes walk to high ground where you can see the pyramid in the distance. It catches the sun just as it did when you helped set that final capstone in place decades ago. You feel pride, yes. You helped create something that will outlast kingdoms, that will puzzle and inspire humans for millennia. But you also feel rage at the cost, at the waste, at the casual cruelty that treated human lives as building materials for divine glory. You know that history will remember the Pharaoh's name. The pyramid will be called his achievement, his vision, his legacy. The architects will be noted in scholarly texts. The priests will be mentioned in religious contexts. But your name, the names of the tens of thousands who died building this monument, those will be forgotten, lost to time like the workers' graveyard that the desert has already reclaimed. Yet something remains that pharaohs can't control and time can't erase. In every perfectly fitted joint, there's a piece of your skill. In every precisely angled passage, there's your sweat mixed into the mortar. In every block, lifted against gravity and human endurance, there are your years measured in stone. The pharaoh claimed immortality through his tomb. But you achieved something more lasting. You became part of a structure that will endure long after gods and kings are forgotten names in dead languages. It's not the immortality anyone would choose, but it's the only kind available to men like you. Immortality through absorption into something larger, eternal presence through systematic erasure. And perhaps, thousands of years from now, someone will excavate the workers' village. They'll find your tools, your quarters, your simple possessions. They'll piece together the real story of how the pyramid was built, not through divine inspiration or willing devotion, but through human suffering on a scale that challenges comprehension. Maybe then, your sacrifice will be remembered. Maybe then, the true cost of architectural immortality will be understood and acknowledged. Until that day, the pyramid stands as both monument and gravestone, magnificent in its achievement, terrible in its price, eternal in its reminder that some kinds of glory are too expensive for any civilization to afford. And in your dreams, when pain and memory allow sleep to come, you sometimes see them all again. The thousands who died building eternity for someone else. They're still working, still lifting blocks, still hoping to finish a task that has no end. They wave to you across the years, across the desert, across the boundary between life and death. And you wave back, understanding finally that you were all part of something larger than yourselves. Not the Pharaoh's vision of divine immortality, but humanity's capacity to endure the unendurable, to survive the unsurvivable, to remain human in the face of forces designed to destroy humanity itself. The pyramid stands, the workers rest, and the story continues, passed from dreamer to dreamer, until someone finally hears what the stones have been trying to say all along. We were here. We mattered. We built this with our lives. Remember us. They call it the curse of the pharaohs. Mysterious deaths, unexplained accidents, supernatural vengeance against those who disturb the sacred tombs. Tales of archaeologists dying under strange circumstances, of expeditions plagued by inexplicable misfortune, of ancient wrath reaching across millennia to punish modern intrusion. But if there is a curse upon the pyramids, it's not the mystical wrath of dead god kings. It's something far more real, far more terrible, the accumulated anguish of hundreds of thousands who died building these monuments to mortal vanity disguised as divine necessity. The stories begin almost immediately after the pyramid's completion. Workers returning to their villages speak of nightmares that never end, dreams where the dead call to them from within the stone blocks, visions of overseers who died decades ago, still demanding more work, faster pace, greater sacrifice. These aren't just dreams. They are remnants of their souls, echoes trapped inside the very stones they built. Some dismiss these as the ravings of men broken by impossible labor. But the stories persist, spread, evolve, take on lives of their own. The pyramid, it seems, is not content to simply exist. It reaches out through the dreams and memories of everyone who was part of its creation. The workers' pain lingers in the walls, whispering in the dark corners of their minds, and even the earth seems to remember their suffering. Modern archaeological evidence tells its own dark tale that no amount of academic sanitization can disguise. The workers' cemetery at Giza contains thousands of bodies, men, women, even children, who died in service to the pharaoh's dream of architectural immortality. But these aren't the carefully mummified remains of the wealthy, wrapped in fine linen and preserved with expensive spices. These are mass graves, bodies piled together without ceremony or individual recognition, disposed of like construction waste. The skeletons reveal a catalogue of systematic brutality that reads like a medical textbook of industrial accidents. Crushed vertebrae from lifting weights no human spine was designed to bear. Fractured limbs that healed poorly or not at all. Skulls damaged by falling stones. Bones that tell stories of malnutrition, disease, and systematic abuse spanning decades. Each skeleton represents not just a death, but a life destroyed in service to someone else's vision of eternity. A farmer who never returned to his fields. A father whose children grew up without him. A husband whose wife spent decades wondering if he would ever come home. Modern researchers working at Giza report experiences that skeptics dismiss, but workers can't forget. Tools that disappear and reappear in impossible locations. Electronic equipment that fails without explanation. Photographs that develop with unexplained shadows and shapes moving through the frame. Some see fleeting figures standing in the distance, dressed in rags, moving like ghosts through the pyramid's corridors. But perhaps these aren't supernatural phenomena. Perhaps they're the natural result of working in a place where so much human suffering has been concentrated and compressed into stone. The pyramid doesn't just contain the pharaoh's mummified body, it contains the concentrated agony of everyone who died creating it. It's as if the pyramid itself remembers and carries the weight of the lives lost. The mathematical precision of the pyramid's construction becomes more haunting when you understand its human cost. Every perfect angle was achieved through the sacrifice of men who died learning what angles wouldn't work. Every precisely fitted joint required the deaths of workers who made errors that couldn't be corrected. Each step forward in the pyramid's design came at the expense of lives that had no place in the pharaoh's vision of eternal glory. The pyramid's perfection isn't despite its human cost, it exists because of it. Each architectural triumph was purchased with blood. Each engineering breakthrough required the systematic breaking of bodies and spirits. Visitors to the pyramid often report feeling overwhelmed by emotions they can't explain or justify. A crushing weight of sadness that has nothing to do with the physical structure above them. A sense of loss, of grief, of lives wasted in service to vanity disguised as divine purpose. The very air around the pyramid seems to hum with a kind of sorrow, a reverberation of the endless toil and forgotten lives that went into its creation. Tour guides learn to recognize the signs. They call it the weight of the pyramid, a sudden change in atmosphere where visitors feel inexplicably heavy, as if the burden of the past has settled on their shoulders. But the workers who built it know the truth. The pyramid is not just a monument to the gods, it is a testament to the suffering of those who lived and died within its walls. Tomorrow will bring new blocks to cut, new dangers to survive, new ways for the quarry to test whether you deserve to live another day. The limestone is patient, the pyramid is hungry, and you are caught between them, trying to remain human in a place designed to grind humanity into dust. Close your eyes now, gentle listener, and let the weight of this story settle upon you like dust from ancient stones worn smooth by millennia of desert wind. We have walked together through the shadow of the pyramid, following the footsteps of men whose names history forgot, but whose suffering carved itself deeper into stone than any hieroglyph. We have witnessed the true price of immortality, not the pharaoh's gilded journey to the afterlife, but the eternal remembrance of those who died, creating the vessel for his divine voyage. In the darkness behind your eyelids, you can still see them, can't you? The bent backs of workers carrying loads that should have broken them. The calloused hands gripping tools until death loosened their fingers. The eyes that looked upon the rising pyramid and saw not wonder, but their own tomb taking shape block by block. These men live now only in stories like this one, and in the consciousness of those who choose to remember what others prefer to forget. Their bodies returned to dust long ago, scattered by desert winds that erase all traces of individual existence. Their names have been forgotten, lost to time, and the deliberate erasure of those who found their stories inconvenient. Their families died, and their families' died, until no trace remains of the bloodlines that once loved them. But their sacrifice speaks through stone, with a voice that time cannot silence. Every perfectly fitted joint whispers their dedication and skill. Every precisely angled passage echoes their endurance under impossible conditions. Every chamber carved from solid rock bears witness to their refusal to surrender, even when surrender might have been mercy. The pyramid stands tonight, as it has stood for over 4 millennia. Magnificent, mysterious, enduring. Tourists photograph it by moonlight. Scholars study its astronomical alignments. Artists paint its geometric perfection. Writers describe its testament to human achievement, all of them drawn to its grandeur, its precision, its defiance of time and mortality. But now, you know the other story. The story carved not in hieroglyphs, but in scars on human flesh. Written not on papyrus, but in blood, mixed with mortar. Preserved not in golden burial chambers, but in the mass graves that the desert has reclaimed, leaving only whispers in the wind to mark where the forgotten lie. This knowledge changes how you see the pyramid forever, doesn't it? Its beauty becomes complex, layered with understanding of what beauty cost. Its achievement becomes ambiguous, weighted with awareness of who paid for that achievement. Its wonder becomes haunted by the memory of those who died, wondering if their sacrifice had meaning. And perhaps that's as it should be. Perhaps the most magnificent human achievements should be viewed through the lens of human cost. Perhaps every monument should be understood not just as triumph, but as tragedy. Perhaps every wonder should remind us that wonder often comes at a price too high for conscience to bear comfortably. The workers who built the pyramid sought no immortality for themselves. They wanted only to survive each day, to endure each impossible task, to hold on to some fragment of the humanity that the pyramid's construction was designed to strip from them piece by piece. Yet they achieved immortality anyway, against their will and without their consent. Not immortality in golden sarcophagi surrounded by treasures for the afterlife. Not immortality in jeweled burial masks and sacred texts, but immortality in the stones they shaped with hands that bled, in the precision they achieved through skills learned in suffering, in the endurance they demonstrated when endurance should have been impossible. Their immortality is written in limestone and granite, encoded in the very structure that was supposed to serve only the Pharaoh's eternal glory. They became part of something larger than themselves, not through choice, but through the systematic transformation of human life into architectural achievement. Their spirits do not rest in elaborate burial chambers surrounded by everything they might need for eternal life. They rest in the knowledge that someone, somewhere, remembers their story and understands that their suffering was not meaningless, even if its meaning was not what anyone intended. This remembrance is their afterlife. These words are their burial prayers. This story is their monument, invisible but indestructible, carried not in stone, but in the hearts of those who hear it and understand that behind every wonder stands someone who suffered to create it. As you drift towards sleep, let your dreams be gentle with these ancient souls who knew no gentleness in life. Let your rest be peaceful in a way theirs never was, earned through suffering they never chose. Let your morning come without the sound of overseers' commands or the weight of limestone blocks pressing down on shoulders too human to bear such divine burdens. But do not let their memory fade with dawn's arrival. Carry their story with you into the waking world like a sacred trust. Remember that behind every wonder stands someone who suffered to create it, that behind every achievement lies someone who paid its price in ways that achievement never acknowledges. The pyramid teaches us that human greatness comes in two forms that history too often confuses. There is the greatness of those who command monuments to be built, who dream visions that reshape landscapes and define civilizations. And there is the greatness of those who build them, who endure the unendurable, who survive the unsurvivable, who remain human in the face of forces designed to destroy humanity itself. History usually remembers only the first kind of greatness, celebrating the vision while forgetting the hands that made vision reality. But the second kind is no less real, no less worthy of honor, no less deserving of immortality. Tonight, as you sleep, the pyramid stands silent in the desert, its passages empty of everything but shadows and memories. The wind moves through its corridors like breath through the lungs of a sleeping giant, carrying whispers of names that were never meant to be forgotten. The stones settle with tiny sounds that might be sighs or prayers, or the whispered names of the forgotten calling to each other across the centuries. But the silence is not empty. It is full of presence, the presence of everyone who ever lifted a block, carved a joint, carried water to the dying, or spoke a name aloud when names were supposed to be erased. Their work is finished. The pyramid is complete. The pharaoh has been buried with ceremonies befitting a god. The dynasties have fallen. The empire has crumbled. The civilization that built the monument has become dust. But the stones remain, and in them, so do the workers. They have found their rest at last, not in the elaborate tombs they never expected, but in the knowledge that their story has been told. Not in golden sarcophagi, but in the understanding that their sacrifice has been acknowledged by those who came after. Sleep now, inheritor of ancient strength. Let this story carry you softly into dreams, where the dead can finally speak freely and the living can hear them without fear. Let the voices of the pyramid builders sing you lullabies of endurance that sustain them through impossible days. And when you wake, remember, you have inherited their strength, their refusal to surrender when surrender seemed the only rational choice, their determination to remain human in the face of forces that would reduce them to tools of construction. The pyramid was built by pharaohs and slaves, by overseers and architects, by priests and engineers, and countless others whose roles have been forgotten. But it was also built by something more fundamental, by the human spirit's refusal to be broken completely, by the soul's insistence on dignity even in degradation, by love's persistence even in hell. That spirit lives in you now. That dignity belongs to you. That love flows through you to future generations who will face their own pyramids, their own impossible tasks, their own choice between surrender and endurance. The stones are silent now. The desert is still. The stars wheel overhead in patterns that the pyramid's architects mapped and measured with precision that amazes us still. But their calculations could not account for the most important element in their grand design, the indomitable human spirit that made their vision possible. That spirit needs no monument because it is its own monument, rebuilt fresh in every generation, eternal not because it is carved in stone, but because it is carved in the human heart. Rest well, guardian of forgotten names. Dream peacefully, knowing that some things cannot be destroyed, cannot be forgotten, cannot be lost, as long as one heart remembers, one voice speaks, one dream carries forward the truth of who we are and what we owe to those who came before. The pyramid builders rest, their story lives, and you carry it forward into tomorrow, into dreams, into the endless conversation between past and present that makes us human. Sleep well, sleep peacefully, sleep knowing that you are surrounded by love that spans millennia, by courage that defies death, by hope that outlasts empires. The stones remember, the wind remembers, and now you remember too.